Next on our list, across the NBA arenas, the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Atlanta Hawks have an interesting history of arenas. Just so you know, the Hawks aren't native to the city of Atlanta. The Hawks joined the ranks of the Clippers, the Pistons, the Kings, all franchises who have a long history of playing in different cities. The Hawks have played in 10 different venues in their franchise 80 years of existence, one of the most in the NBA. But with no further ado, let's get it! Part 1, the early years.
To Middleton. Middleton puts up the jumper, puts it in! Chris Middleton, another clutch shot on these plays.
Hawks began as a franchise in the old National Basketball League in 1946 as the Buffalo Bison. Buffalo Bison. Play that clip right quick.
The grandfather hooked him and threw him up in the air.
McLeod says the man.
Sorry. I got carried away. The first home of the Bison was the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, or the ALD. The arena broke ground in 1939, opening in 1940 to the public. Outside of the Buffalo Bison, it hosted a slew of other teams, including the NHL Buffalo Sabres, and hosted various NCAA basketball tournaments. The total cost of the arena to build was $2.7 million, adjusted now to $62 million. It was a replacement for the Broadway Auditorium in the Peachbridge Arena that at the time recently collapsed. Moving forward, the Hawks, aka the Bison, did not spend too much time in Buffalo, but the arena was dedicated as a war memorial for those who perished in World War I. Well, as I said, they didn't spend too much time in Buffalo. Actually, they only had one season. Actually, half a season before the team moved to Moline, Illinois by the team's manager, Leo Ferris. The Bison only played 13 games in the arena, struggling to crack 1,000 fans, while they needed to at least break 3,600 fans. The arena's capacity for basketball reached 18,000, but had 16 executive suites over the years. And over the years, this arena had 2 renovations in 1970 and 1990. But the Hawks would not be the last NBA team to play in this arena, for the Buffalo Braves, aka Los Angeles Clippers, called this arena home for 8 years. Unfortunately, the Buffalo Memorial Arena closed in 1996 when it was replaced by the current KeyBank Center, but wasn't demolished, Buffalo Memorial, until 2009. The Bison's first victory in the arena was against the Syracuse Nationals, now known as the Philadelphia 76ers, on November 10, 1946, at a score of 50-39. The team's last home game was against the Sheboygan Redskins, the predecessor in a way to the Milwaukee Bucks. Might have been the predecessor to, well, we'll get there. Mainly because the team was one of the first professional teams in the state of Wisconsin. When the Hawks moved to Moline, they became the Tri-City Blackhawks, playing in the NBL from 1946 to 1949 before the NBL became the NBA. The Hawks would stay in Moline, Illinois from 1946 to 1951, when they called the Wharton Fieldhouse, located on 1820th Avenue, their new home. Now, they were called the Tri-City because the area that Moline is located in is known as the Tri-City because of the cities of Moline, Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. Now, the Wharton Fieldhouse opened as a facility for high school basketball in 1928. The building, named after Theodore Findlay Wharton, who was president of the Moline High School Athletic Booster Club, and helped raise funds to get this field house built. And it was originally named the Moline Fieldhouse before it was renamed. The arena's capacity, 7,250 for basketball. For the Hawks, their first season in their new arena, they went 30-50, but still made the playoffs, beating a team that doesn't even exist, before losing to the Minneapolis Lakers in the semifinals, which we all know will go on to be the Los Angeles Lakers. For much of the Hawks' time in Moline and the NBL, the Hawks were a playoff team before finishing in their last season 25-43 in the 1950-51 season. During this time, the Hawks drafted legendary point guard Bob Cousy, but did not want to play for a small market team, demanding $10,000, but the front office gave him $6,000 and sold him to the Chicago Stags. Well, that team folded, and Cousy went on to play with you know who. In addition, legendary coach Ray Auerbach was the head coach of the Hawks for a year and was responsible for Bob Cousy coming to Boston. As for the Hawks, they became the first team to sign an African-American player and Hall of Famer William Pop Gates in 1946. But the Hawks were not staying in the Tri-City area for long. Now, the Hawks got a lot of, you could say, history with the Boston Celtics, but we'll get to that later. Moline was just too small for the team. The Hawks were officially in the NBA after the merger and they needed a bigger city and a bigger arena. So, guess who next was on the list? Another predecessor to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Hawks in their own selves in a kind of way. So in 1951, the Hawks moved to Milwaukee, becoming the Milwaukee Hawks. Now, I already covered the Mecca, aka the Milwaukee Arena, aka the US Cellular Arena, aka the UWM Milwaukee Panther Arena, as it's called now. You know what? I always thought about this. A side note. Just name UWM in Milwaukee, Wisconsin State. Anyways, the Milwaukee Arena had just opened in 1950, built for a cost of $7.6 million in today's dollars, $102 million, breaking ground in 1948. The Hawks will play in Milwaukee from 1951 to 1954. During this time, the team was the worst in the NBA, posting victories 17, 27, 21, and 26 in their 4 seasons in the city. And for some reason, just similar to Moline, they always miss out on having, well, the cities that the Hawks play always miss out on having superstars that become Hall of Famers. Moline missed out on Bob Cousy. Well, they missed out on another Bob too. The team was lucky to draft Bob Pettit, who became Rookie of the Year, playing under Red Holzman, who once played for the Hawks, but in Milwaukee before retiring to become coach of the team. Red Holzman would later become the coach of the New York Knicks, becoming a championship head coach in 1970. But since the Hawks were bad, they moved out of Milwaukee to the city's beer rival and baseball rival, the St. Louis Hawks, which it would be called in 1955. Now, the city of Milwaukee did not have an NBA team until the Bucks were born in 1968, calling Mecca home. If you want to hear more about that, go watch my video about the Milwaukee Bucks and their arenas. Remember to hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. The first game for the Hawks in Milwaukee, they would lose 66-68 to the New York Knicks on November 3rd, but received their first victory 3 days later against the Fort Wayne Pistons, now known as the Detroit Pistons. Their last game in Milwaukee was a victory over the Golden State Warriors, who were actually the Philadelphia Warriors at the time, and scored 99-84 behind Bob Pettit's 34 points. Now, moving over to St. Louis, the Hawks in 2 different arenas, one being the Kiel Auditorium, the other being the St. Louis Arena. The Kiel was named after famed St. Louis Mayor Henry Kiel in 1943. Now, the Kiel, or formerly known as the Municipal Auditorium, opened April 14, 1934, and was home to the St. Louis University basketball team for much of its existence. It had a capacity of 9,000. Now, the arena was unique because it was split into 2. The front of the building was the Kiel Opera House, and the other side was used for sports. The arena only had 2 tenants in its lifetime: the Hawks and the St. Louis University basketball team. The Hawks played their first game in the arena on November 5th, 1955, beating, once again, the Minneapolis Lakers by a score of 101-89. Despite the bad record of 33-39, the Hawks made it to the playoffs, only to lose to the Pistons in 5 games in the Western Division Finals. And yes, the Hawks played in the West. A lot of these East Coast, well, now Eastern Conference teams played it in the West. But the Hawks were slowly cooking up success. Next year, they would reach the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics. winning their first finals games in the arena 198 and also winning their first final game ever. But the Hawks would lose the series in 7 games. Also this season, they drafted Bill Russell, but well, you know how that went. In the 1957-58 season, the Celtics will return again to the finals to play the Hawks. This time, beating the Boston Celtics in 6 games, winning the finals on their home floor to a score of 110-109 behind Bob Pettit's 50 points and 19 rebounds in front of a crowd of 10,000. This will be the Hawks' only championship win and will put Bob Pettit in the record books. Actually, a double-double 50-point game and over 10 rebounds wouldn't happen until 2021 by a person I would not name because he's a traitor. But anyways, the Hawks would reach the finals again, but they would lose to the Boston Celtics. Now, the St. Louis Arena came into play only for occasional use, notorious for its dome, and it was located on Oakland Avenue in St. Louis, of course, in downtown, near the downtown area. Known for its design of lamella roof, it was behind the Madison Square Garden as the largest indoor entertainment space in the country, with specs of 476 feet long, 276 feet wide. A 13-story building could fit in there, they say. Opened in 1929, the St. Louis Arena, or Checkerdome as they call it, sustained damage to its roof in 1959 by the 59 tornadoes, an outbreak of 17 tornadoes in the state of Missouri. One of the reasons for the Hawks moving to St. Louis Arena at the time is because the Cales fell in structure. But in 1968, the Hawks were on the move again. This time, because the owner felt that the kill was outdated. He did not want the team to share with the St. Louis Blues, who played in the St. Louis Arena. He felt that the Hawks should have their own arena and receive all the revenue. He tried to sell the team in 1967 to a New Orleans group, but that didn't work. And it's always New Orleans with these people. But by the spring of 1968, the owner, Ben Kerner, sold the Hawks to an Atlanta real estate developer named Tom Cousins and a former Georgia governor, Carl Sanders. Well, bye-bye, St. Louis. Hello, Atlanta. So what did that mean for the Keel and St. Louis Arena as far as their futures? Well, the Keel will go on to host various concerts and wrestling matches as well as college basketball team tournaments until 1991, and when it was closed and then torn down in 1992. What stands on the site today is the Enterprise Center that is once known as the Keel Center. Interesting, the Hornets tried to move into St. Louis and use the Enterprise Center, but Shin did not want to share once again the revenue with the St. Louis Blues, and the Blues got a lot of power in that city. But the Keel was totally torn down. The Opera House still stands after it was renovated and reopened as the Peabody Opera Arena, or I should say Peabody Opera House, in 2011. As for the St. Louis Arena, well, the arena became home to the St. Louis Blues after Chicago Blackhawks left permanently. Hosted the Spirit of St. Louis, formerly known as the Carolina Cougars, which we talked about in the previous video about the Hornets arenas, hosted a game where Bill Walton went for 44 points, 21 for 22 shooting from the floor in the victory between the UCLA Bruins and Memphis State in the 1973 NCAA basketball final. But the arena was closed in 1994 after the Blues moved to the Enterprise Center and then demolished in 1999. What stands there now at the St. Louis footprint: apartment buildings, hotels, restaurants, office buildings, and this development is now known as the Highlands. The Hawks were on the move again, a move that really didn't change their fate and success, meaning more wins and finals wins, but I guess really put the team on the map, and I guess was probably the better move for the team in its future. Atlanta.